This is Twit.
Let's talk about technology. Otherwise, I'm just going to continue being jealous of you. First, the Snapdragon 865 is the premium chipset that they announced at the event yesterday. And as is always the case, we're going to see this in most of the top-of-the-line Android handsets throughout this coming year. How is Qualcomm approaching, like, one of the highlights of this, of course, is kind of the 5G integration, but they're approaching it a little bit differently with this. How are they doing that?
Okay, so they have two different 5G enabled platforms, essentially.
Right.
The upper tier 865, it only supports one modem, which is the Snapdragon X55. This is not an on-die modem, so it's a discrete chip that must be paired with the 865, but it's the only modem that the 865 supports. So, no matter what device you get, even if the actual phone doesn't end up having the right band support, you'll still have a 5G chip in there, but it depends on whether or not the carrier and the OEM, they go through all they pack the right hardware, they do the certifications, they enable the right antennas. So the 855 plus the X55 plus the 865 is the high-end chip. And on the other side, the upper premium tier, the upper mid-range side is the 765 and the 765G Snapdragon platforms. Those two devices come with the new Snapdragon X52 modem, which is fully integrated into the chip itself. So there's no separate modem, separate from the SoC itself. And this one is their first fully integrated 5G chipset. If you compare the Snapdragon X52 in the 765 versus the Snapdragon X55 in the 865, you'll notice that the download speed and the upload speed is about half on the X52 integrated modem versus the discrete modem in the 865. But other than that, it's like 3.7 gigabits per second versus 7.5 gigabits per second, both insanely fast speeds.
Yeah, no matter what, it's pretty good.
No matter what, you're getting really good speeds.
Yeah, people aren't going to mind if they're getting a mid-tier, let's say an upper mid-tier device, and it has 5G capability baked in right out of the gate. And maybe it's a little slower than what 5G is capable of, but still ridiculously fast. Why do you think they went the different approach? Why didn't the premium have some sort of embedded option? I would think of premium, like offering embedded 5G into the premium option would just be wonderful for the top tier. Does this give the hardware manufacturers more flexibility around what they choose to do around 5G?
So I asked a product manager who worked on the 5G side about this exact question. He told me that it was because of the product development roadmap. They had decided years ago that they would develop the 865 SoC, and they would pair it with the X55 modem because they wanted to have the best of both worlds. They wanted to have the best application processor in the 865, and they wanted to have the best modem possible in the Snapdragon X55. So they had to develop it separately because, the 5G like standards weren't really finalized until the middle of last year.
Right.
So they wanted to design both without having to compromise in any way, like performance and specs on both platforms.
Okay, that makes sense. But there are more capabilities than just 5G here. 5G, again, we're still kind of like playing it by ear. This is definitely going to speed things along a little bit on the handset side of things, but those networks still need to be built out and all that kind of stuff. So we're still kind of in a waiting game, but this is one step forward. What about some of the other things? I'm hearing a little bit about kind of image capabilities, particularly in the 865, the Spectra 480 image processor. What are some ways that this might wow us in the upcoming generation of phones?
Oh boy, I would say that the Spectra 480 ISP is definitely the biggest improvement in terms of like year on year versus last year's 855.
Wow.
So one of the big things that they talked about on stage is the fact that they were able to achieve 2 gigapixel per second pixel processing. And because they have this massive increase in speed, they were able to slow down the clock cycle, so that instead of processing 1 pixel per clock cycle, they're processing 4 pixels per clock cycle. So they have faster pixel processing, better thermal efficiency, more power saving. And because of all this, like greater efficiency, much faster processing, they're able to, increase the resolution basically everywhere. So one of the first things they like to tout is the fact that not only can you capture 4K HDR video with the Spectra 480 ISP, but you can also take 64 megapixel images at the same time. So right now, if you use a Pixel phone, you can record a video and then you can tap the shutter button and take like an image, right? But those images are not going to be as high quality as what you'll be getting with the 865's new Spectra.
Oh, that's nice.
Another thing that they're doing is the fact that the 720p videos at 960 frames per second, the slow motion videos, the Spectra 480 is now able to handle that kind of slow motion without any time constraints. Because the previous generation would, they didn't have enough thermal efficiency. It would start overheating, like the Spectra 380 in last year's model would just not be able to handle that kind of throughput. But now they've made such a big improvement that it's able to record limitlessly at 720p 960 frames per second. So those are just 2 of the biggest changes in the new image signal processor.
Nice. And I mean, changes that will undoubtedly start to appear in like the Galaxy S11, which tends to be usually the S series from the Galaxy phones often are kind of one of the earlier devices that we start to see in the premium tier that start to utilize this new chip and or the Qualcomm's latest and greatest Snapdragon and all of those features kind of baked in. So I'm sure we'll start to see that. Another thing I'm hearing about is an improved fingerprint sensor, which personally, I was not a very big fan of the S10 in-display fingerprint sensor. I felt like it was really inaccurate. I felt like it promised a lot and delivered very little.
I used it for a little bit, and I immediately put that Samsung phone aside and said, and I'm going to use this really cool other one that didn't do, what was it, ultrasonic?
That was right. The S10 had the ultrasonic, which is, from a technology perspective, is supposed to be better. But I just found the optical sensors to be better, more dependable.
More dependable, yeah.
Yep. So how is that changing here? 3D Sonic Max fingerprint reader is part of this. What will that change in next year's models?
So the biggest change is the fact that the sensor itself is much bigger. Qualcomm says the new sensor is 17 times larger than it was before.
Wow.
So the recognition area, the area where you can put your finger and unlock your phone, is now 30 millimeters by 20 millimeters in size. So that's big enough, according to Qualcomm, to allow you to register 2 fingers at the same time. I'm sure no one's really going to be like registering 2 fingers at the same time, because
that's really secure.
Can you
but
imagine,
the idea is, the recognition area is so much bigger that you won't have to like scramble to put your finger around. You will have a much easier time just putting your finger on the display and unlocking.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that's totally needed. Any of those in-display fingerprint sensors, it's always really precise as far as where exactly your finger needs to go. And had to know that at some point they were going to be able to figure out how to kind of broaden out that space.
Make the whole screen.
Yeah, that would be really nice, right?
I'm on board, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Anything else that you feel like we're missing here from this particular top-of-the-line chipset?
So there are a bunch of other changes that Qualcomm has been talking about. One of the most impressive that really wowed people on stage is thanks to the new generational AI improvements. They're calling their 5th generation AI engine. Without getting into too much of the details on how they improved it, if you paid attention to the demo, the one that really impressed people on stage was they had a speaker who was speaking to their phone. It was transcribing their voice while at the same time translating that voice into Mandarin. So not only were you able to like save a transcript of your voice, but it was also translating it in real time into another language.
Oh, wow.
That's impressive.
That's nice. I love how fast this stuff is developing right now. It's so rapid around AI and what that's actually going to empower over the next couple of years. Really cool to see what that's going to turn into.
Like the singularity.
Yep. Well, yeah, okay, maybe not so cool.